Hey guys, welcome to The Rachel Cruze Show. So according to a recent Gallup poll, only about 46% of American adults have a will that says how they want their money and estate to be handled when they die. This stuff is not fun to talk about, okay? In this episode, we're gonna go deep, y'all. We're gonna get into the nitty gritty of this because it's really important. My team and I, we were thinking about the subject and I'm like, I want people to be educated. I want you guys to know exactly what happens and why it is so important to get something like a will. A will does not take a long time. It does not take a lot of effort to create and to get one because you're about to see, the tangled mess that happens when you don't, but I want you to be aware. So, in general, when you go to make a will, you name an executor or a personal representative. So this person is going to read your will and make sure that everything is carried out the exact way you want it to be. Now, this can be a lawyer, this could be a trusted family member. And then in the will, you also name beneficiaries or the people that you want to get your stuff. There's also a part called gifts, which is where you spell out specifically what each beneficiary will get. Then finally, you will name guardians who will take care of any children that you have in the home. But if you don't decide on any of that ahead of time, things get very complicated. So here's what happens to your finances after you die without a will. Bank accounts. So a savings account is an example of an asset along with everything else that you own, like a car, your house. And when you die without a will and you didn't name a beneficiary for your bank accounts and you never named an executor, then the state will appoint an executor based on local law. So until the courts decide who will distribute your assets, they are frozen, no one can touch them. Even if you told them before, you get X amount of dollars and you die without a will, that person gets nothing. Again, it is frozen. So usually the job of the executor is assigning to the surviving spouse or another family member. But if nobody's willing to take the job, then the courts will name a public trustee as the executor. The executor will use the funds in the account to pay off any of the estate's creditors. Then they will distribute the money according to local inheritance laws. Now, if you're single and you die without a will, your parents will probably inherit your whole estate, including any money that's left in your bank account after your debts are paid. If you are married and you die without a will, your estate will probably go to your spouse if you both own it. But if you have a separate property, it would be split among your surviving spouse, kids, siblings, and parents. Now, this can get very messy, especially if you've had multiple marriages. All right, real estate. Real estate is another example of an asset. And if you die without a will and you own real estate, the laws of your specific state where you live will determine how your property will be divided. Most likely, it will be distributed in shares to family members, which could include spouse, kids, adopted kids, parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, cousins, and even distant relatives. The only people who are not eligible to get shares of your property are stepchildren, longtime partners, and loved ones who are not family. If no relatives can be found, then the entire estate usually goes to the state. If you own real estate in a different state than where you live, then the laws of that state will determine what happens to your property. If your property has a mortgage, the person or people who inherit your property will be responsible for paying the mortgage. All right, investments. If you don't have a will, you usually are asked to name a beneficiary when you enroll with your employer's retirement plan or you start putting money into an IRA. So if you die without a will, the money will go to those beneficiaries. Now, if you never named a beneficiary and you didn't have a will, then just like your bank accounts, the money will be paid to your estate. All right, staying with me, guys? You got this. Okay, next up, student loans. If you have federal student loans at the time of your death, they will be forgiven. But if you have private student loans when you die, the lender is not required to forgive them, and the way they handle that can be very different depending on who you're dealing with. So some lenders might seize every asset that's in your name, like bank accounts, cars, everything. And if that's not enough to cover your debt, then the rest will just remain unpaid. Now, if someone co-signed your loan, that person will be responsible for that loan. All right, any other debt. So in general, any debt that is in your name gets paid by your estate. Again, all the assets that you own at the time of your death. Your executor will be in charge of making all those decisions and making sure that everything is taken care of. If you have more debt than assets, there are instances where your debt can become your family's responsibility. If anyone ever co-signed a bill or a loan for you, or you live in a community property state, or you live in one of the states that has filial responsibility laws, which are only related to children being held responsible for health care and long-term care, then the person who co-signed, your spouse or your kids, could be responsible. Creditors usually have about 3 to 6 months after your death to submit a claim against your estate, which your family members or executor will then have to deal with that. Creditors cannot access any life insurance benefits that you leave, most retirement accounts, and the contents of a living trust. But that rule doesn't apply if there are no living beneficiaries listed in your will. It's a lot, you guys, I know. It gets complicated, it gets so technical, but I want you to understand that. Like, it's a big deal. Like, if you, again, have debts, if you have assets, if you have an estate, if you have stuff, you need to get a will, y'all, so you can be responsible that when something happens to you, because it's a when, not an if, then everything is protected, that people that you love know exactly what is happening. A will is a level of communication that actually is a lot of love to your family. So when you create a will, you get to choose, again, how your estate will be distributed, who will take care of your children, instead of all of those decisions being made by other people or even the government. And legally, your choices should be honored. You have the ability to make those choices now, and so do it. Do not wait. You can create your own will online in less than 20 minutes with Ramsey Trusted Provider Mama Bear Legal Forms. I make it so easy, you guys. You just plug in your information. I'll put the link in the description. But it's so, so important. So get a will if you do not have one. And also share this video with a friend. You may be like, oh my gosh, this is the most depressing video to share. But it is, it's one of these things that's like, if you're an adult, you need to be responsible. And getting a will is part of that, you guys. Again, it's loving your family well. So remember to take control of your money and create a life you love.